Great. So good evening, and everybody, welcome to tonight's webinar. For those of you who are joining us the first time, welcome to Plant Forward. Plant Forward is an event that is organized by ACTAsia's Compassionate Choices Network, and we are a community of 11 organizations across Asia working to promote sustainable lifestyle and responsible consumerism. And Plant Forward is our annual event in support of the UN's Global Week to Act for the SDGs, to promote sustainable development and sustainable lifestyle. And we're really excited to be a part of this campaign. Tonight, we are continuing on with the theme of speaking about the health benefits of a plant-based diet. And we're really happy to have the Executive Director of the Philippines Animal Welfare Society, Ms. Ana Cabrera, and also Dr. Johan Manez from the Philippines. We will be speaking on the subject of cardiovascular diseases. And yes, and so we will learn about how a plant-based diet can help us treat this disease, even prevent this disease. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to hand it over to Ana to do a quick introduction. Thank you, Ana.
Hello, greetings to all. I'm Ana Cabrera, and thank you, Joy, for having us here. I'm with the Philippine Animal Welfare Society, a volunteer-based animal welfare group in the Philippines that's promoting the humane treatment of all animals. While we're mostly known for dog and cat rescue, PAWS has recently come up with welfare projects for farmed animals, and we're trying to also encourage people to shift to a plant-based diet, because that is really the way where we can improve welfare, animal welfare, and also promote environmental friendliness for the Philippines. And so, having said that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Johan Manez, and we're very pleased to have him. He's the lifestyle medical consultant of In-Lab Diagnostic and Medical Center in Pasay City here in the Philippines. He is also the medical director of Solid Rock Lifestyle and the medical director of the Doctor's Kitchen in the Philippines. And welcome, Dr. Johan Manez.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, and since we're talking a lot about lifestyle medicine, can you give us a bit more background about your current medical practice, and especially what is lifestyle medicine?
Sure. Lifestyle medicine is pretty much the way we handle patients is that we provide the basic education that people need so that they understand how they should live to have healthy lives. And we focus on the community because we know that in the community we have families who usually have these chronic conditions. And so lifestyle medicine addresses these chronic conditions in a way where we introduce healthy lifestyles, including healthy diets, physical activity or exercise, avoidance of risky substances such as cigarette smoking and alcohol. Also, we recognize that sleep is important, so we introduce that into our education with patients. And we also introduce good relationships. I mean, sometimes we're called the love doctors because we go into people's lives and encourage healthy relationships, because without healthy relationships, I don't think we'll be very happy, and our lives will be very dull and probably even lonely if we don't have healthy, thriving relationships. So there's these 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine that we introduce as we educate patients, and because of all these 6 pillars, then we're able to not only prevent and arrest certain conditions, especially chronic conditions, but today we're literally reversing these diseases, including type 2 diabetes, for example, and heart disease, which will be our topic this evening. as well as a whole lot of other chronic diseases, including certain types of cancer.
Okay, so we're excited to have you come and talk to us today about treating heart diseases through a plant-based diet and lifestyle changes.
Yes.
Cardiovascular diseases, or CVDs, are the leading cause of death globally, according to the World Health Organization. An estimated 17.9 million died from CVDs in 2019, representing 32% of all global deaths. So of these deaths, 85% were due to heart attack and stroke. And we know that more and more people are suffering from heart conditions. So this is a very serious matter. Before we start talking
Yes.
about treatment and cure, can you start by telling us what are the most common types of CVDs that you see in your practice, and what causes these conditions? Is it mostly due to genetics or other factors?
That's a good question. Cardiovascular disease, it's actually very similar to other circulatory type diseases. So when you say cardiovascular disease, we're focusing on the heart. But in essence, when you have cardiovascular disease, you also have other conditions that affect the circulatory system. And usually these are caused by blockage of your vessels that carry blood to your organs. So when people have the blockage in the brain, like an artery supplying blood to the brain, then you have a stroke. If what is affected is the blood vessel or the artery that supplies blood to certain areas of the heart, then you get a heart attack. Okay, so CVDs are focused on the heart, but in general, these are circulatory type conditions, and they're basically called atherosclerosis, which means the blocking of the arteries due to plaque. And so there are, if we're just talking about cardiovascular diseases, then these are diseases focused on the heart alone. And that means blockages of the heart, which usually causes either a myocardial infarction. There's different types of chest pains that we experience, right, with these kinds of conditions. Or it could be things like angina, which means the heart is not getting enough oxygen, okay, but it's not totally blocked yet. The blood vessel is not completely blocked. It may not be completely blocked. So these are, when you say cardiovascular diseases, these are very similar diseases. They're all, the bottom line of these diseases is that the arteries are being blocked by plaque, which is essentially from the buildup of cholesterol in the system, in the blood.
So, due to genetics, or is that you just said from the buildup? So it's not due to genetics, but due to factors.
Yeah. So let me share with you a slide very quick that may help us understand what the risk factors for heart disease is, and by so doing, our audience might be able to understand more whether what happens with heart disease is a genetic problem or is it more of a lifestyle problem. So let me just share my screen real quick here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So if you look at the screen, this arc pretty much tells us the risk factors of developing heart disease. And you'll see that up at the very top there is LDL cholesterol, specifically oxidized LDL cholesterol. So that is what literally causes the buildup of blockage in the vessels, blood vessels that provide blood supply to the heart. So yes, the heart pumps blood to supply the rest of the body, but it also pumps blood to itself. Okay, and when the arteries that pump blood to itself are clogged, then that is what causes these cardiovascular diseases. So there are two types of risk factors, as you will see on the screen. There's the modifiable risk factors, which is above this line here towards the bottom of the screen, and then the uncontrollable risk factors. And so the uncontrollable risk factors are age and gender. If you could see here at the top, modifiable is genetic. So there is actually something we can do that will help change our genetics so that we don't produce heart disease. And that is something that we only recently found out. We're talking about epigenetics here, where there are switches in our genes that you can turn one gene on or off depending on the lifestyle that you live. And so that if you eat very unhealthy foods, then your genetics will turn heart disease on, okay? And when you start eating healthy foods, then your genetics, the on and off switches, the epigenetics will turn the genes off. And so we've seen this in studies, in many studies. And so we now know that genetics does play a role, but the thing is we can modify the expression of these genes by altering the other risk factors. And again, one of the main risk factors is LDL cholesterol, specifically oxidized LDL cholesterol in the blood. So that is the main risk factor. That's why it's at the very top of this arc here. Of course, you can't control your age, you can't control your gender. So LDL cholesterol is the most important risk factor for developing heart disease. I hope that I've answered that question.
Yes, yes. In fact, in Philippines, I've heard this a lot. LDL stands for lechon de leche. That's like the roasted pig. They often associate it with that. And they say, you know, we have to be careful about our LDLs or lechon de leche. Because
I'd like to add to that. So just for our audience who don't speak Tagalog or are not from the Philippines, we have a term we use in lifestyle medicine. LDL are the little devils. Okay, so they're the bad cholesterol, and then the good cholesterol is HDL. So HD being heavenly darlings. So yeah, that's what we say to our patients. Easier to remember.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you think since we have connected it with lifestyle, and so a lot of even the genetics can be reversed with the lifestyle changes, how do you think current Asian modern day lifestyle contributes to the development and severity of these conditions with the CVDs?
Yeah. Actually, Asian culture and Asian food is relatively, or was, I should say, relatively healthy until the introduction of the agricultural era, where we were able to now produce in mass certain types of products, certain food products. And because of that, we started to introduce things like restaurants and fast food. And that pretty much messed up our healthy diets in Asia in general. So Asians are very healthy in general. We're very healthy in general until the introduction of these, again, modern day instant fast food restaurants where you don't need to cook. You just have to pass by the restaurant, you get your food, and then you go. So today, because of that modern lifestyle that we're living, current our cultures, our food that used to be healthy now is being overtaken by Western type food, I would say. And so because of that, we're also starting to see the increase in Western type diseases in Asian countries. So it's more of the Westernization of Asian countries that I think contributed to the increase of heart disease rates across Asia. I mean, Japan used to be the healthiest in terms of heart disease in the world, but now we're seeing that more and more people in Japan are developing the same lifestyle diseases caused by very unhealthy diets and very unhealthy lifestyles. So in the Philippines, we have the data in that our top killer is exactly the same top killer in the US, which is heart disease. So our number one killer in the Philippines is heart disease, just like you see in other Western countries around the world. So I don't know exactly about the other countries in Asia, but I see that the trend is going up, and there's more and more people suffering from chronic diseases, especially heart disease.
Oh, so you're maybe saying that also more and more restaurants and fast foods is directly connected to that condition.
Yeah. And just the availability of more animal-based foods, which is where we get most of the cholesterol from in our diets, in our blood. If you ask, do you need cholesterol as a human being? Yes, absolutely, we need cholesterol. But the thing is, our liver produces all the cholesterol we need, so that when we eat cholesterol from our food, that is extra cholesterol, we don't need that cholesterol. And so that causes a buildup of cholesterol that we don't need in our bloodstream, especially as you process and expose the cholesterol to air, and it causes oxidation when you cook it. And that oxidized cholesterol is what really causes the buildup of plaque in our arteries and eventually kills us through a heart attack or a myocardial infarction.
Interesting, because and we'll get to this later, the plant-based diet has zero cholesterol. Am I right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that is, if it's purely plant-based diet, absolutely zero cholesterol.
Okay, so before we get into the plant-based connection, how do people know they are suffering from CVD? Or what are the most common symptoms, if any?
Okay, so that's a good question, but it's also a shocking, I will be giving a shocking answer, unfortunately, because the first sign that you actually have heart disease in 50% of the cases is sudden death. That is the first symptom that you have heart disease in 50% of the cases is sudden death. So you really cannot do anything about it. That could be the first sign for 50% of the population. So that's a sad reality. So, you know, all your labs are okay, your cholesterol is normal, okay? But then all of a sudden, you run up the stairs because you're maybe in a rush, in a hurry, and then you suddenly have a heart attack, and then you die. So your loved ones, your family are wondering, he had a clean bill of health, how come he just fell dead with a heart attack? And that is the case. That is what we see in society today. You can have a clean bill of health, but slowly, underneath all that laboratory normals, we actually see a buildup of cholesterol in the arteries of people's hearts. So that's the first sign in 50% of the cases. Other cases, other times, you'll have a feeling of, an elephant sitting on your chest, difficulty of breathing. Sometimes you have shortness of breath when you do simple things like walking up the stairs, or if it's really bad, then even just combing your hair could be an issue with people who have extensive heart failure because of blocked arteries in their heart. So what I'm concerned of is the 50% who won't even have a chance to feel these symptoms, to experience these symptoms before they find out that they do have heart disease. So it's something that the public really needs to be aware of, that heart disease is a killer, and it is killing the majority of deaths in our society is due to heart disease.
Not very good. I mean,
No,
that
not very good at
me
all.
feeling very good when I ask for symptoms, and then you say 50% is death. And we want a symptom that will prevent death, but unfortunately for heart disease and CVDs, it might not be, it might be asymptomatic. That's what you're saying. It's just, it kills you
immediately.
So how often do you see this disease, and how serious or severe is the condition that mostly you come across with in your profession?
I mean, heart disease being the number one killer, you expect that you will have a lot of heart disease patients. Just this afternoon, actually this morning, I had a heart disease patient in my office. So, we see these people on a regular basis. And again, these are the lucky ones who actually did experience some chest pain and went to the ER, got an angiogram, and then the doctor, even the cardiologist, found out that, oh, okay, you have certain percent of blockage in whatever arteries that are supplying blood to your heart. So they can do something about that. And there's lots of medical treatments out there. But if you really want to reverse the disease and have it permanently healed, or so that you don't experience these blockages, then there is something that we can do about it. So yes, we do see lots of heart disease patients, and we actually have chronic disease patients with multiple chronic conditions, including heart disease. So, they'll come in as a diabetic, and then we find out that he does have heart disease. He has arthritis, kidney problems, constipation, And so it's not just one disease, it's not just heart disease. There's usually a myriad other diseases that come along with a heart disease, and they're basically one of the same thing. It's the food that really is killing us, because when we start people on a healthy lifestyle, a healthy diet, sometimes we see these conditions just melt away, including the blockages in the heart.
Okay, I think we've come to the crux of the interview. Can a plant-based diet help prevent CVDs from developing in the first place?
Absolutely, yes. Okay, I mean, people sometimes say absolutely, then they don't say yes or no. Well, I'm saying absolutely yes, because I've seen it personally in my practice. People who not only want to prevent heart disease, but we can now reverse heart disease. Truly, if we're talking about nutrition education, right? If we're talking about educating the public, the masses, about preventing heart disease, the default diet should be a plant-based whole food diet. And I say that because this is the only diet that it can not only prevent and arrest the progression of heart disease. If people stay on that diet, we can actually reverse the process. So people say, for the longest time, physicians have thought that once you have heart disease, that is a condition that you will have for life, because it just gets worse. The reason that it gets worse is because we're not treating the cause. We're just giving these kind of band-aid treatments, where the person has a symptom, we try to treat that symptom by giving them a pill, but we never address the cause. And the cause of the heart disease is the high cholesterol food that people actually eat. There's of course other conditions that increase our cholesterol, including stress. So we'll have to also manage stress of the patient. We'll also have to manage the other 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine that I mentioned earlier, because food may be, food may be one of the most important, if not the most important aspect in the 6 pillars when it comes to reversing heart disease. But there's also other conditions, other things that people have to do in order to improve their chances of reversing that heart disease, including stress management. Okay, so yes, we have been able to reverse heart disease. We have proven that the blockages just melt away. It is a metabolic process to create the blockage, so it's a metabolic solution that we need. And the only way to improve a metabolism that will reverse the condition will be to change the way people eat, change the way people perceive food, and of course change their overall lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. You're saying that we're not treating the cause, the reason why they still have, or they're not able to treat the cardiovascular diseases. They're not treating the cause. So is it also safe to say that the cause really is the food that they eat, because it contributes contributes to the buildup? And
Yes.
having said that, if it's not just the food and the stress factors also, would you be able to tell us, like, the percentage of sometimes people say we're stressed, but we don't eat meat. So what are the chances of a stressed person that doesn't eat meat and the stressed person that eats meat? What are the chances in that combo or combination?
Yeah, of course, the worst combo would be a person who's stressed out and at the same time eats meat, right? That would be the worst scenario. The thing is, when you look at laboratory results, now I want to show you, I mean, we're talking about reversing disease now, right? Reversing heart disease. Well, let me just show you one slide here, actually a couple, 1, 2, 3 slides on how certain countries in the world were very successful in reversing the heart disease in their country, because they decided that they didn't want to die off as a nation. They didn't want to die from heart disease. Okay, so let me just share this slide real quick. And this slide is a study, or at least a multivariate analysis of those are kinds of studies of Dr. Ansel Keys. And he is the one who made this discovery. So let me just share my slide real quick. So if you'll see here, this was in the 1980s, right? Where they discovered that Finland was the #1 country with the highest cholesterol, highest cases of heart disease in their country. They're just up there. Okay, so we see that at the left side here, Japan had the lowest rates of heart disease. And what happened here was that it was the diet of these countries. When you compare the country with the highest cholesterol rates and the country with the lowest cholesterol rates, 80% of the variance could be explained by differences in their usual diet, especially in their amount of saturated fat. So it wasn't just the cholesterol in the food, it was also the saturated fat that they were looking at. And we know that saturated fat can come from animals, or it can come from plants as well. There are certain plants with a lot of saturated fat. And that's why when we introduce a plant-based whole food diet to a person with heart disease, we not only recommend a plant-based whole food diet, we also add a low-fat diet. So it's a plant-based whole food, low-fat diet, because we now know that even saturated fat, which we can find, for example, in palm oil or even coconut oil, that saturated fat can stimulate our liver to produce more cholesterol than we actually need. Okay, remember, the dietary requirement for cholesterol is 0. We don't need cholesterol from our food. But when we do eat saturated fat, the cholesterol that our liver produces, it produces it in excess because it's stimulated to produce more. So when you look at this information, in Finland compared to Japan, there was, I should say, 14 times more heart attacks. That's not just a 20, 30, 40, 50% increase. That's a 14-fold increase. That's like 1,400%, right? More common in Finland than it was in Japan, because we now know that cholesterol is the main culprit, right? But Finland, like I said, Finland didn't want that to happen. They didn't want to die off because of heart disease. They didn't want to do that. And so what they did was, there was a project that was launched. It was the North Karelia project, cardiovascular disease prevention in Finland. So basically they asked all their farmers, right, to, instead of farming dairy, they would be farming berries and vegetables. And they went as far as, one town competing another town on how much berries they can consume in one meal. And basically everybody started eating plant-based whole foods, and the result was amazing. Okay, let me just share you this next slide. Remember that their rates in Finland, okay, this was during the 1973 data, where they found that Finland was the #1 after just 25 years of putting their whole country and encouraging them to eat more plant-based foods rather than dairy and animal-based foods. They were able to decrease their heart disease by as much as 85%. You can't do that through pills. We've never done that through pills. A whole population decreased their heart disease by as much as 85%. All of Finland went down 80%. North Karelia, where the project was focused on, they decreased their heart disease by 85%. So that is humongous. That's a huge drop in heart disease rates. That's why we really know that it works. If you put anybody on a plant-based diet, they have almost 100% chance of reversing their heart disease. Okay, so we greatly reduced cardiovascular and cancer, even cancer mortality, all-cause mortality was reduced to 45%, leading also to greater life expectancy, approximately 7 years for men and 6 years for women. So that just shows us how powerful lifestyle and food is when it comes to reversing the #1 cause of death. That's why, when I should say specialists like cardiologists recommend nutrition for their heart patients, they should recommend by default a plant-based whole food diet, because that's what all the evidence tells us. So now, vying for the world record heart disease death rates is the United States, because they were second on the list, and now they are the top country with the most heart disease rates in the world. So that just shows us how powerful lifestyle and diet is in reversing the #1 killer in the world, heart disease.
Doctor, what exactly is it in meat that contributes to all these factors, and what is it you think in plants that makes it the preferred diet?
Right. So I want to answer that in a very simple way, because if I go into the molecular the molecular explanation of things, it might not be too understandable to the public. So before I became a medical doctor, I was actually a biologist. That was my pre-med. And in biology, we compared everything, systems, right, including the gastrointestinal system of animals. And lo and behold, certain gastrointestinal systems are designed by nature to eat certain things. Like, for example, a regular house lizard. I don't know if you have that in your place, but in our place, in our country, we have a lot of house lizards in the Philippines, and they eat insects, right? Their gastrointestinal system is designed to help these lizards eat insects so that they can thrive. They can not just survive, but thrive. But if you start feeding house lizards with bits of strawberry or bits of, I don't know, fruit, okay, their system is not designed to eat that. They're going to later on suffer some sort of malnutrition and eventually die from some disease. And so we find that in different species of animals, including carnivores. So carnivores are designed to eat meat, and their whole gastrointestinal system is designed to eat meat. When it comes to the human being, when we look at our teeth, when we look at our gastrointestinal system is very similar to herbivorous animals, where our intestines are very long. The acid that we produce in our stomachs are limited compared to the acid that tigers and lions produce. And that's why they can digest half a zebra, right? And not have upset stomach or indigestion. But we know that humans, when we eat a lot of meat, like, some of these eat all you can restaurants that we have, right? They want to eat the worth that they paid for. And so they're going to stuff themselves with a lot of meat. That evening, they'll be going to the bathroom because they have indigestion of some sort. That alone tells us that we're not designed to eat a lot of meat, if any at all. And just by that, I know that our system was designed to eat more plant-based foods. And I'm not the only one saying that. There's a group called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine in the US, and it's actually an international organization. I'm also a member of that organization. After 35 years of research, they discovered that we are herbivorous animals, and there are 4 food groups that we should be eating from as human beings. I just call this the human diet, just because I know that's what we should be eating as a species, right? So if you forget everything I say this evening, or I would like you to remember these 4 food groups. We're supposed to be eating from fruits, whole grains, beans, and vegetables. Those 4 groups. You eat from those 4 food groups every single meal, every single day, and you are literally going to prevent yourself from getting most, if not any, chronic type disease, including heart disease, which is the #1 killer in the world today.
Oh, doctor, it's just sad because you did not mention meat in any of the food groups, but the way our fast foods are created, you'd think that they would comprise like the major food group that we should be eating, but it's not the way, because yeah, we have difficulty trying to find places where to eat as vegetarians. And also, weird thing about Asians, when they go to a buffet, they tend to gravitate towards the meat because they want to get their money's worth.
That's
Also, affluence is tied with meat consumption, so the less likely that people would eat vegetables because of the negative things, like if it's considered associated with poverty, and not being very expensive, so they tend
Yeah.
to shy away from that. It's interesting, the study that you've shown us about Finland, and how long did it take for them to see these differences and improvements, like when
25
they
years.
said 25, okay.
25 years.
But for a person or an individual who has been diagnosed with CVD, and if he or she shifts to a plant-based diet, how long do you think would it take him or her to see differences or improvements?
Great question. I don't just think it, I know it. Okay. So once a person decides, for example, we know that these people are lucky because they're the 50% who actually feel the heart, the chest pain, right? And the angina pectoris that we call, and they're able to go to the ER and get checked, and they find out that they actually have blockages in their heart. So they're the lucky ones, right? The other half aren't so lucky. They just drop down dead because of heart disease, or a heart attack, I should say. So the lucky ones, when we place them on a plant-based, whole food, low-fat diet, and they have these symptoms, right, of heart, chest pain, difficulty of breathing, as if an elephant is stepping on their chest kind of feeling, within 10 days, the angina usually goes away.
Within
That's
10
the time.
days?
Within 10 days, the angina, the pain in the chest, that usually goes away. So we know that their blood is now circulating a lot freer because there's now no cholesterol and very little fat in their diet. Okay.
Wow, that's amazing.
If their blockage, let's say they're really, the extreme thing we see is a completely 100% blocked artery. That's bad. But because it's grown at a very, very slow rate, they don't actually feel it immediately. And so that their heart is able to find other ways of supplying the part that is blocked. But if you put these people on a plant-based whole food diet, within 1 year, they have almost 50% blockage. If, let's say this is the diameter of the artery, right? And it's 100% blocked. Within 1 year, you can have around 50% unblockage, if you want to put it that way. 50% of their heart will become unblocked because of the melting down of the plaques. All right. And in 2 to 2.5 years, completely gone. That's how fast it can happen for the individual. And that is, it's not that I don't encourage surgery during life-threatening situations, but if they have no option and they're weak and they can't be operated on, they can't be, a stent can't be placed in the artery, right? So their only choice is a plant-based whole food diet. So even without surgery, even without medications, you can completely reverse the heart disease within 2 to 2.5 years. And this has been proven over and over and over again. Hundreds, if not thousands of people have undergone these programs. I personally do that in the Philippines, and we see wonderful results.
I think we should know more of these, like an advertisement of, how the cholesterol and the blockages melt down just because of the plant-based diet, and we'll see a lot more people eating
it's not
their
magic. It's not magic. It is science. We can actually explain how that happens.
Wow. Okay, so what final piece of advice would you give to our audience from a lifestyle medicine perspective to improve our health? Well, obviously leaning towards promoting a plant-based diet.
First of all, I'd like people to just initially be aware that there is such a thing as a plant-based whole food diet. And it is not just a diet that avoids animals and allows us to be more friendly, not just to the animals, but also to the environment. We're talking about climate change all over the world today, right? Animal farming is the top contributor to the pollution that we have in this world, right? And so just by eating a plant-based whole food diet, you're not just helping your health, you're not just helping yourself get better, you're also helping the environment, and at the same time, you're avoiding cruelty to animals, which we know that trillions of animals die each year because of our tongue, our craving for meat, all these poor animals dying. So my message is to explore, for people to just try 30 days on a plant-based diet, experience how it helps you personally when we're talking about health. And maybe if you like the effects, then just embrace it as a new lifestyle. That's why we're called lifestyle medicine specialists. We help people change their lifestyles in a way where they realize that, okay, plant-based whole foods can actually taste good. There's a whole myriad of foods that you can explore through a plant-based whole food diet. So you're doing yourself good, you're doing the world good, the planet, and you're also saving lots of animals. So that is my message to everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. But just a quick follow-up question, because Plant Forward is really about making small changes and believing that those small changes can lead to an even bigger change. And so our topic now is reversing cardiovascular disease through diet and lifestyle change. But is it all or nothing? Like, if you're trying to treat the condition, what about small changes like swapping 1 to 2 meals a day to a plant-based diet instead of being 100% vegan, vegetarian overnight?
Right.
Will we see improvements and changes, or do we need to follow the strict diet and lifestyle 100% in order to see these improvements?
So if you're for now, if you're healthy, you don't have any issues, and you want to prevent yourself from developing heart disease, small changes will work until you eventually are able to embrace a completely whole food plant-based diet. But if we're talking people who are already sick, they have had 1 or 2 heart attacks, they've had bypasses, they've had stents placed in their arteries in their heart, we're talking about saving a person from death, right? That person is literally a time bomb at any time it can go. So if we're talking about reversing the heart disease in people who already have the condition, we have to understand that it is really an all or nothing situation where we have to embrace this healthy lifestyle, healthy eating. We're talking about plant-based, whole foods, low-fat way of eating, okay? And it's not scary. It's not as scary as you think, because the food is delicious. I mean, I'm a foodie and I love my food, and it is all plant-based whole food. So I don't just recommend this lifestyle to my patients, I actually live it myself. And so I know the struggle of change. I know how people can struggle to change from an omnivorous type or even a carnivorous type of diet to a more plant-based, if not wholly plant-based, whole food, low-fat diet. It is daunting, but if it is your life we're talking about, you have to make that decision. You can't just have these small leaps towards a better future. You have to make, I call it, quantum leap, just to get out of that ditch and finally get back on the road to live a healthy life and reach your dreams. I mean, life is short. You have to live the best life, and the only way to do that is to be healthy and be happy. So absolutely embrace a plant-based whole food diet, and I can assure you, you will not regret it.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for all your wonderful insights, and also for encouraging. Actually, this is the Plant Forward campaign. Everything you just
Right.
said, the food is delicious, it's good for your health, it's good for the environment. That's what the Plant Forward movement is all about. And so we thank you for giving us the science behind it and giving us your experience as a lifestyle doctor, medicine, and all these diseases that can be reversed, and as well as what we can do as individuals to make these changes that may really save one's life.
Yeah, thank you.
Joy?
Thank
Yeah.
you for having me here.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you, Dr. Manez. That was amazing. You know, for many of us involved in this campaign, we are aware of the health benefits of a plant-based diet, but to hear you break that down, and also it just gives us so much hope, because I'm sure that, you know, with the prevalence of cardiovascular diseases, that so many of us have family and friends who are suffering from these conditions. And we hear again and again that these are chronic conditions. Like, once you have it, once you start the pills, you'll be taking it for the rest of your life. And your message is one of hope. And the most amazing thing is that it is not difficult. It starts, you know, with a change, and it is most hopeful for people who, you know, who we don't have those conditions yet, and that we can start taking a step in the right direction. And so, yes, as Anna said, this is exactly what Plant Forward is about, to share this knowledge with everyone. This year for Plant Forward, we have a 10-day challenge. We hope you're able to join in with us. We are offering a recipe book with plant-based menus for you to try out. They do taste delicious. You know, not eating meat is not a sacrifice. You are doing yourself a service, you're helping animals, you're helping a planet, and there's a whole world out there for you to explore amazing flavors and, you know, ingredients. And we would really recommend that you join us for the 10-day challenge, and yeah, and make a step in the right direction and listen to what your body tells you, because you know, when your body is feeling healthy, you will definitely know it. And, you know, it may be very difficult to try to change your lifestyle suddenly overnight, but we encourage you to take a step and explore something new that is great for everyone. And yes, and so thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Dr. Manez. And we'll wrap it up for this session of Plant Forward, and hope you will join us for our other webinars in the series. Thank you and good night.